Welcome to the deep dive. Today, things are going to get a little dark, a little twisted. We're diving into the world of serial killers.
Yeah, it's a topic that never fails to fascinate people, and thankfully we've got some great source material to work with today. Excerpts from the Wikipedia article on serial killers.
So we're talking history, psychology, all the chilling details. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's start with the basics. What exactly makes someone a serial killer?
Right, because it's more than just, having a lot of victims. The common criteria is 3 or more, but there's a catch.
Okay, so 3 or more victims.
Mm.
What's the catch? What else is there?
The killings have to be separated by a significant period of time. It's not a one-time thing. There's a cooling off period between the murders.
So that's the crucial difference between a serial killer and, say, a spree killer, like someone like Andrew Cumin.
Exactly. Spree killers operate with a sense of immediacy, no cooling off. And mass murder, while equally horrific, is about a single event. Think Charles Whitman, the Texas Tower sniper.
Right. A single explosion of violence versus the drawn-out horror of a serial killer's crimes.
And even then, there are cases that blur the lines, what we call spree serial killers. Folks who might kill over weeks or months, but never really return to a normal life in between.
Now, you mentioned how this topic has fascinated people for centuries. I mean, is it possible some of those old monster myths, vampires, werewolves, were they inspired by real-life serial killers?
It's more likely than you might think. Think about it. Creatures stalking the innocent, often with a ritualistic element to their killings. These stories emerged during times when serial killing, though not understood, was a terrifying reality.
So you're saying those monsters weren't entirely fictional. There might have been real-life counterparts.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Take Gilles de Rais. This French nobleman from the 15th century fought alongside Joan of Arc, but later he was accused of killing hundreds of children. His story even inspired Bluebeard, that creepy fairy tale.
Wow, talk about stranger than fiction. That's horrifying.
It is, right. And then there's Elizabeth Bathory from 16th century Hungary, accused of killing hundreds of young women, supposedly to bathe in their blood, believed it would keep her young.
It's terrifying how those stories became so ingrained in our culture. Real-life horrors shaping our idea of evil. And those are just European examples. What about here? Early America.
Oh, we had our share of horror stories, too. H.H. Holmes in the late 19th century is considered one of America's first recognized serial killers. Built a hotel in Chicago, a murder castle, specifically designed to trap and kill people.
The Devil in the White City. I remember reading about that. It's incredible how these cases, even from over a century ago, still capture our imaginations. Why do you think that is? What is it about serial killers that fascinates and horrifies us?
It's that ultimate taboo, taking a life, but compounded by the mystery, the methodical nature of it. And of course, the media plays a huge role then and now. The more gruesome, the more sensationalized, the more we're drawn in.
It's like this strange paradox. We're repulsed, yet we can't look away.
Exactly. And no one embodies that media frenzy more than Jack the Ripper. Even today, over a century later, his name still sends chills down our spines.
Jack the Ripper. Why him specifically? What made his case such a global phenomenon?
It's simple. Jack the Ripper was more than a killer, he was an enigma. The brutality, the mystery of his identity, the fact he was never caught, it all added to the terror.
And he targeted women in London's East End, right? So you had this element of social vulnerability too.
Exactly. He preyed on the most vulnerable, which amplified the fear. And the media at the time, they ate it up. His case really established how serial killers would be portrayed from then on.
So it was a perfect storm. The brutality, the mystery, the social context. He became a symbol of everything people feared.
Absolutely. And his reign of terror, short as it was, had a lasting impact. Influenced criminal profiling, investigation techniques, stuff we still use today. But he wasn't the only one who captivated the world.
Oh, who else?
Ever heard of the Thuggee cult in India?
The Thuggee cult. Can't say I have.
They were active between 1740 and 1840. And get this, it's estimated they murdered up to 1 million people. 1 million.
1 million? You're kidding. What could possibly drive that level of killing?
It wasn't power or money or even sexual gratification. They believed they were fulfilling a religious duty, carrying out sacrifices for their goddess, Kali. Imagine the conviction, the twisted faith to justify that level of violence.
1 million people. That's just unfathomable. It makes you wonder about the motives behind all this. It's never just one thing, is it?
You got it. It's rarely about just being evil, though, of course, taking a life is inherently evil. It's a complex mix of things: upbringing, psychology, maybe even biology, which actually is a perfect segue into our next topic: the psychology of a serial killer.
Okay, yeah, let's get into that.
Yeah.
If it's not just about being evil, then what creates a serial killer?
Well, one theory points to early childhood experiences: severe trauma, abuse, neglect, things that can contribute to what's called fractured identity syndrome.
Fractured identity syndrome. Okay, now you have to elaborate because that sounds intense.
Basically, it suggests that these early traumas can literally fracture a person's sense of self, their ability to form healthy attachments, to feel empathy, like their moral compass gets shattered.
So they lose their grip on right and wrong.
In a sense, yes, but it's never that simple, right? This fractured identity is often coupled with other things: mental health conditions, personality disorders, even biological factors.
Biological factors. Wait, you mean some people are literally hardwired for this?
It's a bit of a minefield, this one. The research is ongoing, but there are studies that link certain biological factors to a predisposition to violence, like chromosomal abnormalities. For example, serial killer Bobby Joe Long, he had an extra X chromosome.
So are you saying everyone with that specific abnormality is going to be a killer?
No, absolutely not. It's not cause and effect. It's simply one piece of a very complex puzzle. Think of it like a perfect storm, a
Yeah.
bunch of things coming together in just the wrong way.
Okay, I'm starting to understand. So with all these different factors, are there any early warning signs? Things that might hint at the potential for violence?
There is one well-known indicator, but it's not foolproof: the McDonald triad. 3 behaviors that, when they occur together in childhood, have been linked to a higher risk of violence later in life.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What are the 3 behaviors?
Fire starting, cruelty to animals, and bedwetting past a certain age. Alone, not necessarily red flags, but together it's something to watch out for.
Wow, it's like a recipe for disaster almost. But we've been talking about kids here. What about adults? Once someone reaches adulthood, are there any common threads psychologically among serial killers?
It might surprise you, but most aren't outwardly crazy. In fact, they're often very good at blending in, charming even.
Wait, so they wear masks, they hide their true nature.
Precisely. It's chilling, isn't it? But underneath, you tend to find similar traits: lack of empathy, a huge need for control, a fascination with violence and death, and they're master manipulators.
So is that where that Hollywood image of the criminal mastermind comes from?
Not quite. Some serial killers are definitely intelligent, but studies suggest their IQs are pretty average overall. Some are even below average.
Really? That's not what I expected. So much for the evil genius trope.
Right. But they often appear smarter than they are because they're masters of manipulation. They know how to exploit people, how to play on their weaknesses. That's how they get away with it for so long.
It's like they're playing mind games with everyone around them.
In a way, they are. And that's what makes them so dangerous.
And on that note, we're back. We've been exploring the psychology of serial killers, how they blend in, how they manipulate.
It's chilling stuff for sure. And it gets even more disturbing when you realize it's not just men who are capable of this.
Right. We haven't talked about female serial killers yet. And it does seem like we mostly hear about men when it comes to these types of crimes. Is that just because there are fewer female serial killers?
Well, it is true that they represent a smaller percentage of cases, but it's not because they're incapable of this level of violence. In fact, women often employ methods that are less outwardly violent, but just as deadly.
Less outwardly violent. What do you mean?
Poison, for example. Subtle, often undetectable. Allows for control, distance from the act. They often operate within their own homes, their own families even, using their roles as wives, mothers, to mask their crimes.
Ah, so it plays into our expectations. We don't suspect them because they don't fit the stereotype.
Exactly. We associate women with nurturing, caring, not cold-blooded murder.
You mentioned that a lot of these women are driven by financial gain. Is money always the motive?
It's common for sure, especially when they target spouses for insurance money, but there are other reasons too. Revenge, a desire for attention, even a warped sense of mercy.
So even within this smaller group, there's a huge range of motivations. Are there any cases that really highlight that?
Dorothea Puente is a good example. Ran a boarding house in California. Over time, she poisoned several of her elderly tenants to collect their Social Security checks, even buried some of the bodies in her backyard.
It's horrifying how easily she blended in, this sweet old lady, while secretly committing these awful crimes.
Right. It just goes to show you can't judge a book by its cover. But it's important to remember, not all female serial killers fit this Black Widow profile. Aileen Wuornos is a perfect example of that.
Aileen Wuornos, what made her different?
She was a highway prostitute who shot and killed 7 men in Florida. No poison, no quiet manipulation. Her crimes were brutal, impulsive.
It really highlights how much variation there is, even within a group as seemingly specific as serial killers.
Exactly. It's a complex field, and every new case brings new questions, which is what makes it so fascinating to study.
Okay, so let's talk about those questions. What I really want to know is, what's the why behind all of this?
Yeah.
What makes someone take another person's life, not just once, but over and over? Is there even a single answer?
I wish it were that simple. But the reality is, it's incredibly complex. There isn't one single reason, but experts have identified 4 main categories of motivation in serial killings.
Okay, I'm ready. Let's break those down. What are these 4 categories?
First, you've got your visionary killers, driven by psychosis, delusions, hallucinations. Often, they believe they're acting on orders from God or the devil, or that their victims are somehow evil and must be destroyed.
So their crimes are less about malice, more about a warped reality.
Right. They're not necessarily evil in the traditional sense. They're disconnected from reality. Like Herbert Mullen, he believed his murders would prevent earthquakes.
That's terrifying. So what's next? What other types of motivation are there?
Well, then you have the mission-oriented killers. They believe they're on a mission to rid the world of something evil, something undesirable.
So a twisted sense of justice almost.
In a way, yes. They often target specific groups. Prostitutes, drug addicts, anyone they perceive as a blight on society. Like Joseph Paul Franklin, he was a white supremacist who killed black people and interracial couples.
It's a reminder of how dangerous ideology can be, how it can twist someone's perception of right and wrong.
Absolutely. And then there are the hedonistic killers, the ones driven purely by pleasure, by the thrill of the kill. This is a tough one for most people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah, to enjoy inflicting pain on another human being. It's hard to even imagine.
It is.
Yeah.
But for these individuals, it's all about satisfying their own dark desires. And within the hedonistic category, there are further distinctions. You have lust killers, like Jeffrey Dahmer. They get off on the sexual aspect, often involving torture and mutilation.
So fulfilling their fantasies is the ultimate goal, no matter how horrific.
Exactly. Then you've got your thrill killers. They're addicted to the adrenaline, the power, the hunt. Robert Hansen would kidnap women, release them into the Alaskan wilderness, then hunt them down.
Oh my God, that's like something out of a nightmare.
Yeah.
And you said there's a third type of hedonistic killer.
Yeah, comfort killers. Motivated by material gain, Dorothea Puente would fall into this category, getting rid of people for money, for a comfortable lifestyle.
So they find comfort in the idea that their victims' deaths will benefit them. Twisted.
Right. It speaks to a complete lack of empathy. And finally, we have the power control killers. They're all about dominating their victims, often through rituals or prolonged suffering.
So someone like Ted Bundy would fall into this category. With his methodical approach, his need for control.
Exactly. He's a classic example. He loved the power, the fear in his victims' eyes. For these individuals, it's often rooted in a deep sense of inadequacy. They overcompensate by exerting extreme control over others.
It's fascinating and horrifying how these motivations can manifest in such different ways. But at the end of the day, it seems like there's no easy answer.
You're right. It's never just one thing. It's this tangled web of factors, often unique to each individual. But just because it's complicated doesn't mean we can't try to understand it. And that's where these different theories come in.
And that sounds like a perfect topic for after the break. All right, so we've talked about the different types of serial killers, different motivations. But I think the biggest question is still on the table. Why? Why do people become serial killers? Is there any way to really explain it?
If only it were that simple. It's a question that's haunted researchers for decades. There's no single answer, no magic formula, but there are a bunch of theories out there that try to shed some light on this.
Okay, so what are some of the leading theories? What are experts saying about the root causes of this kind of behavior?
Well, some theories focus on biology. They suggest that some individuals might be predisposed to violence because of how their brains are wired, like abnormalities in brain structure or function.
Interesting. So you're saying there could be a physical component to it?
Potentially. For example, damage to the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that controls things like impulse control and judgment, has been linked to aggression and violence. But it's important to remember that human behavior is crazy complex. It's never as simple as saying, oh, it's just this one part of the brain.
Right, it's never that simple. So what else are experts looking at?
Well, on the other side of the coin, you have sociological factors. Think childhood trauma, abuse, neglect, exposure to violence. These things can leave a mark on a person.
It's like that old nature versus nurture debate, isn't it?
Exactly. And more often than not, it's a combination of both. Early experiences really matter. Those things can shape our brains, influence our behavior later in life. Then there's this idea called social process theory, which suggests that criminal behavior, including serial killing, is a learned behavior.
Learned behavior. So you're saying it's not innate, but something people pick up along the way.
Exactly. The theory is that we learn from our interactions with social institutions, our peers, our families. So if someone grows up surrounded by violence, it becomes normalized in their mind.
That's scary, but it makes sense. A child who grows up in a violent home might start to see that as normal, acceptable even.
Unfortunately, that's the idea. And it shows how crucial early intervention is. Surrounding kids with positive role models, giving them a safe and stable environment, it can make all the difference, especially for those who might be exposed to violence or neglect.
Makes sense. And it's not just about what happens in the home, right? I've also heard theories about military experience being a factor. This idea that the desensitization to violence might lead some veterans down a dark path.
Right, that's another theory that's been explored. And yeah, there have definitely been cases of serial killers with military backgrounds, some very high-profile ones, in fact. But it's crucial to remember that the vast majority of veterans do not become serial killers.
Of course. Correlation does not equal causation. It's dangerous to generalize.
Exactly. Every single case is unique, shaped by a whole bunch of factors. To say that military experience alone is a cause would be a huge oversimplification.
So if there's no one answer, no single explanation for what creates a serial killer, what can we even do about it? How do we prevent these tragedies from happening?
It's a huge question, and to be honest, there's no easy answer. But as we've been talking about, early intervention is huge. Identifying at-risk kids, making sure they have access to mental health resources, creating supportive environments, these are all steps in the right direction.
So it's about stopping the cycle of violence before it even begins.
Exactly. And then on a wider scale, we need to tackle things like poverty, inequality, the lack of access to mental health care. We need to build a world where people feel supported, where they feel seen and heard.
A world where violence isn't the answer. Easier said than done, right?
For sure. But we have to start somewhere. And honestly, it all begins with understanding. The more we learn about the dark side of human nature, the more we understand the motivations and the risk factors, the better equipped we are to prevent these tragedies from happening.
That's a powerful message. This whole conversation, this deep dive into the minds of serial killers, it's been terrifying, but also eye-opening. Just goes to show you the human mind is incredibly complex.
It really is. And it reminds us to be vigilant, to be aware, to choose empathy and compassion whenever we can.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, that's about all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we explored the chilling world of serial killers. We'll see you next time.